What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Phil Perry and I diving headlong into free agency. Who do the Patriots need? Who do they lust after? What should they do? It's a Patriots-centric Patriots Talk podcast coming at you.
World champion, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
Before we dive into the prospects for the Patriots to re-sign, Phil, let's go 30 seconds each on Devin McCourty. Layup! Had to bring him back.
Got to do it, especially with turnover in the secondary. He's the quarterback of your defense. He's wearing the green dot quite a bit. And I would imagine the same will be true again next year. Had to bring him back. Communication back there is so important. And Tom, just really important to make sure that safety room is strong because of what you have at corner right now, really what you don't have at corner right now. We can get into some of the names they may be adding, but JC Jackson's as good as gone. He left the door open when I spoke to him last week that, hey, never say never. He could be back potentially, but they're not going to be paying him what he's looking for. So bringing Devin McCourty back, absolutely critical and good for him. I mean, he sort of had the Patriots in a tough spot. Another year, $9 million. Not bad for a kid out of Rutgers.
It's interesting. I spoke to him last week a little bit, and in talking to him, I looked at his stats. I looked at some of his advanced stats. His performance, I think we scrutinized and mistakes made. He had a horrible game against the Houston Texans. One of the worst I've seen him play since his second year in the league when he really floundered. And he missed a tackle in the hole against the Colts on Jonathan Taylor. He and Dante Hightower both. And in both instances, I think the rush was on to say, well, he's getting old. He's losing it. And he and I talked about that. And he said, it's funny, the mistakes that I made in 2021, the reasoning wasn't that, well, it was just a mistake. It was, he's old. He's just as fast as he was. He covers just as much ground. He grades out in Pro Football Focus, love it or hate it, the same way he has forever. Phil, we haven't seen McCourty slippage the same way we haven't seen Brady slippage. He's the same player he was in 2017 and 2018, like it or not.
Yeah, I remember talking to him earlier this offseason. According to the GPS stuff, and they can measure how fast these guys are moving all the time. He said, I'm not getting any faster, but I'm also not getting any slower either. Hitting all the same times that I was a few years ago. So he knew he could continue to play. He's still, again, clearly, all right, he's not on Brady's level, right? But this is another instance where the guy is too good to just walk away. If he wants to keep playing, he should keep playing. And he's getting paid well, for a one-year contract, a guy who's in his mid-30s to do that job. But again, they need it. Listen, brain drain all over at one Patriot place where you're talking about front office, coaching staff on the field, and to lose him potentially would have been massive, I think, for this defense. So good on them for keeping him around.
All right. Good deal. Jacoby Myers, a bit player in this conversation, back as a restricted free agent. He's a bit player because when you're a restricted free agent, you're pretty much not going to go anywhere. Second round tender, he's going to make about $4 million. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's
which
correct.
Is great. Terrific. Good. And he's got a role here. But Phil, give me your insight on what you're hearing about the Patriots and the wide receiver position in free agency. And then let's get into some names.
Yeah. So I think they need what they don't have, and it's size and speed. And so clearly that's what everybody's looking for. Just about every position in the NFL, right? Pretty blanket statement there, but that's what I've been told is size and speed. That's what you should be looking for the Patriots to try to add this offseason. And in free agency, there aren't a ton of options that satisfy both needs, but two names that I think they would be pursuing are Marquez Valdes-Scantling from the Green Bay Packers, 6'4", ran a 4.3 coming out of college a few years ago. Big play threat for Green Bay, just was never really consistent, which could be a red flag, especially when even Davante Adams was out. It wasn't like he necessarily lit it up, but showed flashes of being a real playmaker down the field and outside the numbers. The other name is DJ Chark, and he's another guy, 6'4", ran in the 4.3s coming out of LSU a few years ago. Unlike Valdes-Scantling, never really played with a great quarterback, with an accurate quarterback, with an experienced quarterback there in Jacksonville. And so I feel like he might be the better fit, Tom, because there's some upside there that I think hasn't been realized. Whereas Valdez-Scantling is a great athlete, and I'm sure there's some upside there as well, but he's been working with one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and he never really truly broke out. So I would say, look at one of those two guys if you're the Patriots. And both of them, Tom, what's interesting about those two names is that I think both could make the argument that they should be about $10 million a year players.
No doubt.
And do the Patriots have that kind of cash? Like what I've been told is that, when you're thinking about the top guys, right? Allen Robinsons of the world, even on the other side of the ball, corner, which I know we'll get to, but Darius Williams is a very good player for the Rams that we don't hear about very much, but people thought that he might get franchised. Like, I think they're going to be out of the mix for those kinds of guys. It's going to be that next year that they're more involved in. It's just how many of those can they pick up when they're in the financial situation that they're in. They spent so much money last year, and they're not going to be able to do the same thing again this offseason.
DJ Chark, as Phil mentioned, second round pick, bigger guy, coming off a broken foot that ended his season after just 4 games too. So, but he's very sure-handed. He's just got 9 drops in 4 seasons. I did a free agent primer. And I think that he would be a love it. He fell into my love it category if you're able to get him. He's going to be at least $10 million a year, but again, he would be a scheme and downfield upgrade over Nelson Aguilar. Phil, one player who keeps 2 players at the wide receiver position who keep popping up in my mind are JuJu Smith-Schuster and Braxton Berrios. With JuJu, 25 years old, he's a big slot. He was so good in his first 2 years. Bill Belichick called him an elite player. Also talked to him after that matchup. I believe it was in 2019 with the Steelers, and told Smith-Schuster what a great player he was. He's 6'1", 215. He played just 5 games last year because of a shoulder injury, but he's so young and he has such demonstrated ability that even though he can be a lot as an off the field personality, he would be the perfect low buy ad for the Patriots if it's a $8 to $10 million deal. What do you think about JuJu in the fit? Because he is, again, a bigger slot. He'd be like Jacoby Myers, but more accomplished, stronger after the catch, and it would move Myers someplace else.
Right. And I think the only question is, do the Patriots see him as having enough juice to really change their offense? So I believe that they would be open to slots, outside the number of guys, Z, X, F, whatever you want to call it, as long as it can give them this dimension that they don't have, which is bigger frame, threaten the defense deep. Yeah, Smith-Schuster, I like a lot, and he blocks, Tom. They'll love him for that. I think they like Jacoby Myers. They like Myers. He blocks. He's durable. He's not the same kind of slot they're used to having, but when you have 3 receivers on the field and you want to be able to keep the run game in play, they'll put Jacoby Myers in the backfield and use him as a lead blocker. They did that near the goal line last year at times. So he has a reputation in the league, I think, that's a little different than the public view. He's viewed as this longer, leaner kind of player, which he is, but he's really well respected in terms of his ability to just mix it up in there, which not many people are. And I remember Julian Edelman mentioned that to you. He said, hey, he'll dig out a safety. Like, that's something that Edelman really appreciates, right? That Myers would be willing to do that sort of dirty work. And I think Smith-Schuster would do that too, but you already have a guy at $4 million doing something similar. Are you going to add another player and then move Myers somewhere else where maybe he's not as effective?
Right. All right. So we got wideout. Is wideout their number 1 target spot, Phil, in your estimation?
I think it's corner, Tom, because at wideout, at least you could field a team right now, right? At corner, you're missing a starter on the outside, really important. And so I think they'd be willing to stretch a little bit financially at that spot, maybe more so than some others. But still, you're not going to be talking about the top end guys. I mentioned the name Darius Williams. I don't think he's going to be in play. JC Jackson's not going to be in play coming back here. So, maybe Charvarius Ward from Kansas City, long, lot of experience in man-to-man defense, playing under Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City, 6'1", over 200 pounds, long arms. Like, he might be, Tom, but even he might be a little bit too expensive because of where he's at in his career.
Yeah, he's going to be, he's 26 years old, a cut below JC. It's interesting. When writing this up, he's 6'1", 195. He's a more sure tackler than Jackson. 10 missed tackles in 3 seasons. Jackson's had 20 in the last 3. He allowed 81 completions the past 2 years compared to Jackson's 101. Completion percentage, pretty similar. Jackson's allowed more touchdowns. He's still going to be costly, though. And that's probably going to be a $14 million bite that he's going to take out of you at the age of 26. Are there any lower budget options that you have seen? I know Anthony Averett. Is it Averett? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yes.
Averett, Ravens. He was forced into duty last year, started 14 games. He's a 4th-round pick out of Bama in 2018. What are you hearing on him?
Well, if you're looking at the Patriots and you're saying, as the Patriots, well, we need somebody who can start. We need somebody, if they've got some man-to-man experience, that helps too. He's a great fit. And especially where he knows the secondary rules, the way Bill Belichick would like him to know them, coming from Alabama, playing for Nick Saban and playing in a really man-heavy scheme in Baltimore. That Baltimore secondary was decimated by injury last year, but he was kind of the one guy they could lean on. Played just about every game, 3 picks. He finished with a quarterback rating allowed in the 70s. So, that was 16th in the NFL among corners who had at least 450 coverage snaps. So he's sort of flying under the radar to me. He's only 5'11", so he's a little bit taller than JC Jackson, not much, but he's shown, he's done it, that he can play on the outside and he can start for you. Another name where I would kind of put in the same tier would be Bradley Roby. He was with the Saints last year. Before that, he was with the Texans. He's bounced around a little bit, but somebody with a lot of experience on the outside, a lot of experience playing man-to-man, which we know the Patriots prefer. I found an interesting number, Pro Football Focus. He had the same forced incompletion percentage, which is something they calculate based on pass breakups, interceptions, and passes that fell incomplete because of tight coverage. Same forced incompletion percentage in man coverage last season as Jalen Ramsey on the same number of targets. So listen, he's not Jalen Ramsey. He allowed a quarterback rating of 135 last year, and he's going to be 30 years old, but he's got experience. He's got length. That's the kind of guy that they're going to be looking for to play on the outside. They need somebody, Tom, they can drop in right away and feel good about on the outside.
It's interesting whether or not the Patriots will continue with a man defense all the time, or will they just go to zone a little bit more frequently until they get that guy who can be a shutdown corner. A couple other names, Dante Jackson, who was with the Panthers, absolute blazer. He's 26 years old, 5'10", 180. He's not a scheme fit, but he's got versatility. Also, Patrick Peterson, certainly at the end, he played a ton of snaps though for Minnesota, but he wasn't that productive. But former great man corner, Steven Nelson, Eagles, experienced player, played for the Steelers and the Chiefs as well. He's played a ton of snaps. He's 29. He started 84 of 86 games. So, it's basically the same skinny as Jalen Mills on the other side, who played well. And it's all interlinked. So how well the Patriots do up front, how well they do with their pass rush is going to be critical as well. Do you see any edge interest for this Patriots team, Phil? You have to be multiple. You can't just be a hired gun on the outside like a Hassan Reddick, who is a free agent, and he would be full on a hired pass rusher. Von Miller, straight too expensive, but also a straight pass rusher. Chandler Jones, straight pass rusher. They need some guys with versatility. Some of the defensive ends out there, Phil, Anthony Barr, Trey Flowers, etc. What do you got?
Flowers makes sense, right? Just because they know him, he's going to be a program guy. He's probably going to be relatively inexpensive given the injury history.
Mm-hmm.
I think Anthony Barr is exactly what Bill Belichick would like, because while he does play on the edge, he can play outside linebacker. He's played primarily off the ball for the Vikings. Smart guy, veteran guy, still a pretty good athlete. Is he what he was a few years ago? No, I think he made 4 straight Pro Bowls from 15 through 18. Mm-hmm. So he's closer to the end probably, but he just gives them that a little bit more athletic, but still big. He's almost 260 pounds. Presence to play off the ball. What I've heard about the Patriots defense and how they're constructed, and I've been guilty of saying over the years that they want all their linebackers to be big, right? And I think in a perfect world they would be, but they want at least one big guy off the ball. And then if the other guy's a little bit smaller, if it's not Darryl Roberts, if it's a Landon Roberts, or even if it's Jamie Collins, who was a big guy, but didn't really play big. He played like more of an athlete. You can have that guy. You just want him next to a big thumper. And I think Barr could be the thumper. And you could have one of the guys that's already in house, whether it's Raekwon McMillan or Cam McGrone, who the Patriots like. They like both those guys. Those two, maybe you could see working into that lighter, more athletic linebacker role alongside the big thumper. But right now, because Hightower's not under contract, because Bentley's not under contract, they don't have that big body. So if both those guys go, and they want somebody with some experience who's got some size, Barr would make a ton of sense because he's got that versatility they like too.
It's interesting because I look at Barr and think, okay, is he going to want to be banging heads with fullbacks and guards all the time? Probably not at 30, but Bentley might be willing to. So you got to get somebody fast next to him. I mean, if I had a wish list, I'd say Devondre Campbell, who was with the Packers last year and had 146 tackles and is 232 pounds and can fly. He would be at the top of it. And it's funny because we're talking wide receiver, we're talking cornerback, but the Patriots have absolutely fumigated their linebacker room or are potentially in the process of doing that. Whether they go wide receiver or cornerback, you have a glaring need at linebacker that somehow has to be addressed. And the only thing you have are a bunch of question marks on your roster that you're going to say, well, we're just going to roll these linebackers in. McGrone, Ronnie Perkins, Uche, all those guys. So there is so much uncertainty on that side of the ball right now. Phil. Sorry.
Just to bring it full circle, I mean, makes it even more important why you've got somebody like McCourty back.
Yeah.
You know, and I wonder if Hightower's market isn't what he thinks it could be. Would he be open to coming back? Just so again, you've got some consistency, some institutional knowledge of what's going on defensively there. You know, he's not going to be your fly around linebacker for sure, but I still felt like when he was earlier in the season, when I think he was probably a little bit healthier. I mean, he was blowing up guards and sending them flying, 5 yards back behind the line of scrimmage. So it'll be interesting. Maybe Bentley though, Tom, is the compromise there, because I don't know what his market will be outside of New England. Like, I don't know how many teams are looking for a 255-pound linebacker like that.
No doubt. The last thing I want to hit on before we jettison from this, and we'll keep you posted all week with the next Pats podcast, Patriots Talk podcast on the Patriots moves, but do the Patriots have enough under the radar guys on their own roster or underachievers in their first year of free agency where they say, look, we got plenty of guys in-house. There's no reason for us to go to the store and start buying people. I asked that question with JuJu Smith in mind. It's a huge ticket item. You've already spent on him. He's not going anywhere. He didn't show you a lot. Josh McDaniels indicated plenty of times that this was a developmental year for JuJu Smith. Maybe they didn't expect him to be that, but he was. So if he did have a developmental year, he could be as important as that an Allen Robinson or a JuJu Smith-Schuster if he can take that jump. Same with McGrone. So are the answers for the Patriots in free agency not even free agents?
Maybe at one linebacker spot, maybe at tackle. Do the Patriots look at Micah Onwenu and say, man, every time we put him over there, I know he doesn't look like a tackle. He doesn't move like a tackle, but every time we put him over there, we're totally fine. And he's making whatever he's making. I don't have his contract in front of me. He's got to be making less than $1 million this year. Yep. So would you rather have Micah Onwenu at serviceable tackle performance on the right side, or would you rather bring back a Trent Brown or somebody that I like Morgan Moses, who's kind of the opposite of Trent Brown? Like he's always available, doesn't get hurt, but will probably cost you somewhere in the range of, I don't know, $9-10 million a year. Like, are you willing to make that trade-off? So maybe Onwenu is the solution at right tackle, and then you've got an opening at left guard because Ted Karras is hitting free agency. So I just look at the first two positions we talked about, Tom. They really don't have any kind of answer on the roster for an outside corner or a big fast receiver. They just, those are two things that you're going to have to figure out a way to add, whether it's free agency, trade, draft, worst comes to worst. Like, I think they would like to be able to field a team before they get to the draft. That's the ideal, right? You get there without any glaring needs. So you can just take the best player that you love early on. But I don't know if they're going to be able to fill all of those by the time we get to late April.
To look at your depth chart on April 10th and say, this is what we're projecting is going to be critical. And that might be an interesting exercise for us to do over the next week as free agency dies down and we get close to the second wave free agency, which might be a period in which the Anthony Everett's or DJ Charks are courted. The DJ Chark to me is going to be fascinating. If I had a wish list, it'd be Chark or Schuster or Berrios. Any of those three I'd be a happy guy. And Phil's point on Everett is interesting. But if you can look at a depth chart on April 10th and say, this is what the Patriots have going in. If you've put in a bunch of guys who've played 15 minutes of professional football, that's worth having your hands sweat about. Phil, should we put a lid on this?
Let's do it.
All right. Again, we'll keep you posted. That's your free agent primer. Of course, make sure to go to NBCSportsBoston.com. Phil has had great content all the way going back through the combine on prospects there and prospects in free agency. He's been plugged in very well. I have the column on all the Patriots free agents, from the guys that you say, no, not in this economy, for the guys who are broken, for the guys who'd say, oh, I know him, to the guys who you'd love. Check them out. Bye.